Michael adjusted the knobs on his telescope, fine-tuning the focus on a distant cluster of stars. The observatory, perched on a secluded hilltop, was his sanctuary, a place where the universe unfolded its mysteries one celestial body at a time. He made a few notes in his logbook, the soft scratching of his pen the only sound in the quiet night. The door creaked open, and Tom, a fellow astronomer and old college friend, stepped in, a gust of cold air swirling around him. "Anything interesting tonight?" he asked, peering over Michael's shoulder at the star map spread across the table. "Just the usual distant galaxies and a few minor comets. But there's something odd about the signals from that new star system I mentioned last week," Michael replied, pointing at a series of graphs on his computer screen. Tom leaned in, his interest piqued. "Still getting those anomalies in the data? Maybe it's some kind of pulsar or a hidden planet." Michael shook his head. "No, it's irregular, not fitting any typical celestial phenomena. I've been tracking it for days now. It's almost as if—" Before he could finish, a bright flash illuminated the observatory, cutting through the night like a bolt of lightning. Both men shielded their eyes. When the light dimmed, they looked outside and saw a radiant beam of light touching down in the forest nearby. "This can't be natural. Let's check it out," Tom suggested, grabbing a flashlight. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, they hurried towards the forest. The night was silent except for the crunch of their boots on the underbrush. As they approached the source of the light, the air grew inexplicably warm, and a humming sound filled their ears. Suddenly, the forest clearing lit up, revealing a figure standing in the center of the beam. It was unlike any human or animal. Its skin shimmered like the night sky, and its eyes glowed with an ethereal light. Michael and Tom stopped in their tracks, staring in awe. The figure spoke, its voice musical and echoing through the trees. "Do not be afraid. I am Lyra, from the planet Lyri. I mean no harm." Tom, ever the skeptic, frowned. "Why should we believe you? What brings you to Earth?" Lyra stepped forward, the light around her softening. "I am here to learn about your species and your planet. My mission is one of peace and knowledge exchange." Michael, always curious about the unknown, felt a rush of excitement. "You traveled across the universe to study us? There's much we can learn from each other. What do you need to know?" Lyra's gaze fell on Michael. "I need to understand human emotions and connections. My people lack what you call emotion. We observe, we learn, but we do not feel." Tom looked at Michael, an unspoken agreement passing between them. "We'll help you, Lyra, but you must be open and honest with us." "Thank you," she replied, her voice tinged with what could only be described as gratitude. "I am here to observe and learn. In return, I can share knowledge from Lyri about the cosmos, technology, and perhaps more." As they walked back to the observatory, the early hours of the morning creeping upon them, Michael and Tom listened intently to Lyra's descriptions of her world. A place where science had leapfrogged emotions, where starships sailed across galaxies in the blink of an eye, and where her people sought to understand what it meant to feel. Back at the observatory, they introduced Lyra to the basics of human culture through books, films, and music, each piece revealing layers of human joy, sorrow, love, and fear, emotions she sought to comprehend. As the first light of dawn colored the sky, a new chapter of interspecies understanding began to unfold under the watchful eyes of the stars. The observatory's library, usually a quiet sanctuary where the only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the turning of pages, was unusually lively this morning. Lyra, the alien visitor, was surrounded by an array of books and gadgets, each piece meticulously chosen by Michael and Tom to help bridge the gap between their worlds. "Here, try this," Tom said, handing Lyra a tablet loaded with interactive language apps. "It might help you get a grip on English faster." Lyra touched the screen tentatively, marveling at the technology, which, while primitive compared to hers, was still fascinating in its design. "Your symbols, your words, they are so emotional. Each one carries a weight." Michael, who had been skimming through a book on human psychology, looked up. "Yes, our language is deeply tied to our feelings. Words can evoke sadness, joy, fear, all of which might be new to you." Lyra nodded, absorbing every word. In Lyre, our communication is efficient. We convey ideas and facts, but we do not connect them with emotions. This is why your music moved me last night. It's an expression of something beyond words. Curious, Tom pulled up a chair. Speaking of music, let's try something. He played a few tracks ranging from classical to rock. Each genre has its own feel. See what you make of them. As the music filled the room, Lyra closed her eyes, swaying slightly. This is overwhelming. The vibrations, they stir something within me. Is this what feeling is? It's a start, Michael chuckled. But human emotions are complex. They can be stirred by a memory, a thought, even a scent. Intrigued, Lyra asked, how do you share these emotions with each other? That's where it gets interesting, Tom explained. We use facial expressions, body language, even touch. He demonstrated by smiling and placing his hand over his heart. This means I'm happy or that something touches me deeply. Lyra mimicked him, her hand lingering over her chest. And if I wish to express gratitude or friendship, that's usually a handshake, or sometimes a hug, Michael said, extending his hand. Hesitantly, Lyra took his hand, the contact sparking a tiny shock of realization at the intimacy of human gestures. Seeing her reaction, Tom grinned. Wait till you get to the more complex stuff like sarcasm or irony. That'll really test your understanding of human interactions. They spent the morning diving deeper into human culture, discussing art, literature, and common social interactions. Michael pulled out a set of classic novels and modern bestsellers, explaining the range of human emotions through the conflicts and resolutions found in literature. Why do your stories often center around conflict? Lyra asked, flipping through a copy of War and Peace. It's a reflection of life. We face challenges, both external and internal. Overcoming them is a big part of what many find meaningful in life, Michael responded thoughtfully. And love? Lyra's question hung in the air, innocent yet profound. That's probably the most complex of all human emotions, Tom said with a smirk. Love can drive a person to greatness or lead them to ruin. It's a powerful force. As the day wore on, Lyra absorbed every explanation and demonstration, her understanding of human life growing deeper by the hour. The trio planned more lessons and experiences, eager to explore the vast emotional landscape together. By evening, Lyra had begun to form sentences in English, expressing basic emotions with a growing confidence. Her voice, once monotone, now held hints of warmth and curiosity. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the observatory, the three of them stepped outside, looking up at the sky that was both a barrier and a bridge between their worlds. Thank you, Lyra said, her voice steady and sincere, for sharing your world with me. Michael smiled, a sense of accomplishment mingling with the excitement of the unknown paths ahead. We're just getting started, Lyra. There's a lot more to being human than can be covered in a day. And as the stars twinkled above, it was clear that this was just the beginning of a remarkable journey into the heart of human culture and connection. In the following weeks, Lyra's understanding of human culture deepened, as did her bond with Michael and Tom. But as her knowledge grew, so did her inner conflict about the rules of her own society. It was late one evening in the observatory when these tensions finally surfaced. Michael noticed Lyra's pensive expression as she gazed out the window at the night sky. You've been quiet today, Lyra. What's on your mind? He asked, joining her by the window. Lyra turned to him, her luminous eyes reflecting the starlight. I am conflicted. Learning about your emotions has been enlightening, but it also makes me realize how much my people are missing. We are taught that emotions cloud judgment and lead to chaos. Tom, overhearing the conversation, walked over with 2 cups of coffee. Handing one to Lyra, he joked, well, emotions can be messy, but they're also what make life worth living. Lyra took the coffee, mimicking the human gesture of sipping cautiously. I have begun to feel things I cannot fully understand. When I am with you both, I feel a warmth, a connection. My people would say it is a weakness. Michael exchanged a glance with Tom. Here, feelings aren't a weakness, they're a strength. They can be scary, yes, because they make you vulnerable, but they also make relationships stronger. Is this why humans often form bonds that go beyond mere survival, like friendships and love? Lyra asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Exactly, Tom replied. Those bonds are what we cherish most. They give us reasons to strive for better, to support each other, and to build communities. Michael leaned against the windowsill, thoughtful. And sometimes, those bonds can defy the rules, break barriers. They can be worth the risk. Lyra looked between the two men, a sense of wonder and confusion crossing her face. In my world, such defiance can lead to exile or worse. But here, with you, I feel safe to explore these forbidden feelings. Tom nodded, understanding the gravity of her confession. We won't let anything happen to you, Lyra. You're part of our team now, and we look out for each other. Encouraged, Lyra spent the next part of the evening asking more personal questions about human relationships, trying to grasp the complexities of love, jealousy, and companionship. Michael shared stories of his past relationships, the joys and the heartbreaks, while Tom offered anecdotes from his own experiences. As the night wore on, the conversation turned to a plan for the following day. They decided to take Lyra to a nearby city to experience human society firsthand, a bustling, chaotic, and vibrant place where she could observe the full spectrum of human interactions. The next morning, the trio set out early. The city was alive with sounds, colors, and movements. Lyra absorbed every detail, from children playing in the park to couples strolling hand in hand. She watched interactions at cafes, the exchanges between shopkeepers and customers, and even the brief, often unnoticed gestures between strangers. Seeing all this, Lyra whispered to Michael as they sat at a cafe watching the world go by, "Makes me realize how isolated I've been. My people could learn so much from humans." Michael smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maybe you'll be the one to teach them." As they returned to the observatory that evening, the stars beginning to twinkle in the dusk, Lyra felt a profound sense of gratitude and a burgeoning resolve. She was starting to see not only the beauty of human emotions, but also the potential impact of sharing this knowledge with her people. Despite the risks, she felt compelled to tread this uncharted path, guided by the unlikely friendships she had formed on a planet light years away from her own. The next few days were a whirlwind of exploration and discovery for Lyra. She, Michael, and Tom visited various cultural landmarks, museums, and public gatherings, deepening her understanding of human culture and emotions. Yet, each night as they returned to the observatory, Lyra's thoughts would turn inward, reflecting on the stark differences between her society and humanity's vibrant way of life. One evening, as they reviewed the day's photos and notes, Lyra's mood seemed particularly somber. Michael, noticing her distant gaze, decided to broach the subject. "Lyra, you've been quiet tonight. What's troubling you?" Lyra sighed, her voice low. "I am beginning to question the foundations of my own society. We value order and knowledge above all, but at what cost? We lack the depth of connections I see here among your people." Tom, scrolling through the digital images, paused to look at her. "It's a big step, questioning your entire way of life. But maybe you're the bridge between our worlds, someone who can bring change." Michael nodded in agreement. "Change is scary but also necessary sometimes. If you feel this strongly, perhaps it's something worth pursuing." The conversation sparked a new idea in Lyra. "Perhaps I could start small, introduce my people to simple human emotions through stories or music. Things that could speak to them without overwhelming them." "That's a brilliant idea," Tom exclaimed, warming to the theme. "You could be like an ambassador of emotions. We could help you create a presentation or a collection of experiences to share." Excited by the supportive response, Lyra spent the next hours discussing potential ways to convey human emotions through art and music. They brainstormed different methods, such as virtual reality experiences, interactive art installations, or even simple narrative films that could capture the essence of human experiences. Michael, who had a background in multimedia arts, suggested, "We could compile a series of short films, each focusing on a different emotion. Joy, sadness, love, fear, all captured in a way that your people could digest." "I like that," Lyra replied, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. We could use the footage from our trips around the city, the interactions, the landscapes, the daily life. Tom, ever the practical one, added, "We'll need to craft each piece carefully, ensuring it resonates but doesn't overwhelm. It'll be a fine balance." The trio spent the next week producing content. They captured hours of video, selected music that evoked different feelings, and edited short films to highlight various aspects of human life. Lyra was deeply involved, often directing scenes to ensure they accurately represented the emotions they intended to convey. As the project neared completion, Lyra prepared to present her work to a small group of her peers she had secretly communicated with since her arrival. The night before the presentation, the observatory felt like a staging ground for a diplomatic mission, brimming with anticipation and a touch of nervousness. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Michael asked as they reviewed the final edit of the presentation. Lyra took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. "As ready as I'll ever be. Thanks to both of you, I'm not just bringing back knowledge, but a new perspective that could transform my people's understanding of themselves and the universe." Tom clapped her on the back. "Just speak from the heart. Show them what you've shown us, what you've learned here." The following morning, as they set up the communication equipment to broadcast Lyra's presentation to her home planet, the air was thick with tension and hope. Lyra stood before the transmission device, her figure composed yet vibrant with a quiet determination. "This is more than just sharing knowledge. It's about sharing life itself," she said, turning to Michael and Tom. "No matter the outcome, I want you to know that everything we've done, has changed me. For the better." Michael smiled, supportive. "And hopefully it'll change your world too." As the transmission light blinked on, signaling the start of the broadcast, Lyra began her unprecedented presentation, her voice calm and clear, reaching out not just across space, but across a chasm of cultural understanding, hopeful of igniting a spark of emotional awakening among her people. After broadcasting her presentation, Lyra felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The next few days were a waiting game, as she anticipated feedback from her home planet. Michael and Tom continued their usual observatory duties, but were always ready to lend an ear or offer words of encouragement. "Anything yet?" Michael asked one evening, as they gathered in the lounge area, a makeshift den where they usually discussed their day's findings. "Not yet," Lyra replied, trying to mask her anxiety with a shrug. Communication across galaxies isn't exactly instantaneous, even with advanced technology. Tom poured 3 cups of coffee, handing one to Lyra. "They'll respond, Lyra. And whatever the response, remember, you've started something incredible." As they sipped their coffee, the silence was suddenly broken by a signal alert from the communication console. Lyra jumped up, nearly spilling her drink. "It's them." The trio rushed to the console where Lyra initiated the decryption process to receive the message. The text appeared slowly on the screen, and as they read, Lyra's face fell slightly. "It's mixed," she explained, turning to Michael and Tom. "Some are intrigued and want to learn more, but others are wary, even fearful of embracing what they consider primitive emotional states." Michael placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's a start, Lyra. Change is never easy. You've planted the seed. That's what matters." Tom nodded in agreement. "Let's focus on those who are intrigued. Perhaps you could prepare more material, maybe even organize a virtual exchange." Encouraged by their support, Lyra spent the next week preparing additional content, focusing on positive human experiences and emotions. She included testimonials from various humans discussing what emotions meant to them, how they enriched their lives. Meanwhile, Michael and Tom assisted by setting up a secure transmission channel that could host real-time interactions between Lyra's people and humans willing to share their experiences. "Think this will help them understand better?" Tom asked as he tested the video feed. "It's worth a try," Lyra responded, reviewing the list of volunteers who had agreed to share their stories. Seeing and hearing directly from others might make it more relatable. The day of the virtual exchange arrived, and the observatory was buzzing with nervous energy. Volunteers from around the globe, speaking various languages, were patched into the broadcast, ready to share their personal stories. As the exchange commenced, Lyra introduced each volunteer, facilitating a dialogue that spanned light years. From a poet in Paris discussing the inspiration behind her verse to a Brazilian musician explaining the passion behind his rhythms, each story added a layer to the mosaic of human emotion. Michael watched as Lyra skillfully managed the conversation, her own understanding of emotions deepening with each interaction. "You're doing great, Lyra. How does it feel, handling all this?" Lyra smiled, a genuine human-like smile that reached her eyes. "It's exhilarating. Each story is a revelation, a confirmation of what I've come to learn and love about your world." After the exchange, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Many of Lyra's peers were touched by the genuine expressions of human emotion, and a few even expressed a desire to visit Earth. "That went better than expected," Tom remarked as they reviewed the session recordings. "Yes, it seems we've reached some of them." "Made them feel," Lyra said thoughtfully. Michael leaned back in his chair, looking at the stars through the observatory's open dome. "You know, Lyra, you might just be the ambassador your world didn't know it needed." Lyra looked at the stars too, a sense of purpose filling her. "Maybe I am. And maybe, just maybe, we can bridge our worlds not just with knowledge, but with understanding and feeling." As they ended the day, the observatory quiet once more. The bond between the three of them had never been stronger. They had not only explored the cosmos and the complexities of alien communication, but had ventured into the very essence of what it means to be sentient, to feel, and to connect. And for Lyra, Earth had become more than a place of study. It had become a home. Several weeks passed since the virtual exchange, and the impact of Lyra's efforts began to materialize, albeit with some unforeseen repercussions. As they gathered in the control room one evening, Lyra received a new message from her home planet. The atmosphere was tense. The content of this message could dictate the future of her interactions with Earth. "Let's see what they have to say this time," Lyra said, her voice steady but her hands betraying a slight tremor as she initiated the message decryption. Tom and Michael stood by her side, watching the screen intently as the text appeared. The message was from the Lyri High Council, a governing body that seldom communicated directly unless matters were of significant importance. "The Council has observed your recent activities and the unauthorized cultural exchange," Lyra read aloud. "They recognize the curiosity about human emotions, but are concerned about the potential disruptions to our societal order." Michael frowned. "Sounds like they're scared of change." Tom nodded in agreement. "What are they planning to do?" Lyra continued reading. "They want me to return to Lyri for a discussion about my actions." "It's clear they're not pleased." "That's putting it mildly," Tom muttered. "Are you going to go back?" Lyra paused, considering her options. "If I don't, it could mean serious consequences for me, and possibly for any future interactions between our worlds." Michael stepped closer, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out together, Lyra. You're not alone in this." The trio spent the next hours strategizing Lyra's next steps. They discussed everything from the potential of seeking asylum on Earth to returning to Lyri with a detailed defense of her actions. "Maybe I should go back and face them," Lyra finally said. "I could present everything we've learned here, show them how understanding emotions can actually benefit our society." "That's brave of you, but it's risky," Michael said, concern etching his features. Tom, always looking for practical solutions, suggested, "What if Michael and I came with you? A show of solidarity. Plus, we could help argue your case." Lyra considered this. "Your presence could make a big difference. Showing that humans and Lyrines can work together might help them see the benefits firsthand." They decided to prepare a comprehensive report detailing all of Lyra's activities on Earth, including testimonials from the volunteers who participated in the virtual exchange, and analyses showing potential benefits of integrating human-like emotions into Lyrian society. Over the next few days, they compiled data, recorded videos, and documented case studies. Michael focused on the scientific aspects, while Tom handled the technological explanations. Lyra brought it all together, weaving in her personal experiences and newfound understandings. The night before their departure, they reviewed their presentation in the observatory's main hall. "Do you think they'll understand?" Lyra asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "They will," Michael assured her. "You've made a compelling case, and we'll be right there with you." Tom added, "It's not just about presenting facts. It's about telling a story, your story. We'll make it count. The following morning, they boarded a spacecraft Lyra had secured for their journey. The trip back to Lyra was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about the upcoming confrontation. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a committee of the High Council, and the seriousness of the situation was palpable. The meeting was set in a large hall, where Lyra, Tom, and Michael stood before the council, ready to share their journey, their findings, and their hopes for a future where emotions and logic coexisted. As Lyra began to speak, her voice clear and confident, she knew she was no longer just a Lyrian scientist but a bridge between two worlds, advocating not just for knowledge, but for understanding. In the vast, echoic chamber of the Lyri High Council, Lyra stood confidently, flanked by Michael and Tom. The council members, an assembly of Lyri's most esteemed leaders, listened intently as the trio presented their case. We have come before you today not only to explain but to demonstrate the profound impact that understanding and integrating human emotions can have on our society, Lyra began, her voice echoing slightly in the large hall. One of the counselors, an elder named Sovereign, leaned forward, his voice skeptical. You claim these emotions are beneficial, but how do we know they will not destabilize our ways, disrupt our order? Tom stepped forward, activating a device to show footage of human interactions, their emotional depth, and the positive outcomes of such engagements. These visuals represent a series of interactions among humans. Observe the cooperation, the compassion, the resilience. These are not weaknesses but strengths that have propelled humanity to overcome great challenges. Michael chimed in with scientific explanations, describing neurological studies and psychological research that supported the case for emotional integration. Our findings show that emotions can enhance decision-making, increase creativity, and foster stronger community bonds. These are qualities that could benefit any society, advanced or not. As the presentation continued, Lyra shared personal testimonials from her time on Earth, emphasizing the changes within herself. Since experiencing these emotions, I have developed a deeper understanding of not just humans but of my own potential as a Lyrian. I believe we have much to gain from this new perspective. A younger counselor, Virina, seemed intrigued. And you propose that we just begin to feel? After generations of suppressing such things. It will not be an overnight change, Lyra responded. It requires careful consideration and gradual integration. We can start with volunteers, a pilot program to study the effects systematically. The council murmured among themselves, the idea taking root. Sovereign, still not entirely convinced, asked, and if this pilot program fails? If it brings not strength, but weakness? Michael took the question. Every significant advancement carries risks, but consider the potential rewards. Isn't the possibility of evolving into a more empathetic, connected society worth the risk? Tom added, we're here to help facilitate this transition, to offer our insights and support. This partnership could lead to unprecedented collaboration between our worlds. The debate continued for hours, with council members weighing the risks and benefits. Lyra, Michael, and Tom answered every question, addressed every concern, and clarified every doubt. As the sun set on Lyri, casting a golden glow through the chamber's high windows, the council recessed to deliberate privately. The trio stepped outside, the tension of the presentation giving way to cautious hope. Think they'll go for it? Tom asked, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the evening sky. Lyra sighed, a mixture of exhaustion and optimism in her voice. We made our case as strongly as we could. Now, it's up to them to decide. Michael looked at both of his friends, proud of their efforts. No matter what happens, what we've done today changes everything. We've shown them a new path, and that alone is a victory. When they were called back into the chamber, the counselors were seated, their expressions unreadable. Sovereigns stood to deliver their verdict. After careful deliberation, we have decided to authorize the pilot program proposed by Lyra. We are cautious but optimistic. Your arguments were compelling, and we are prepared to explore this new frontier of emotion. Cheers broke out among some counselors, a rare display of spontaneity that underscored the shift already beginning. Lyra's heart swelled with relief and joy. Thank you, Sovereign. Thank you to all the council. We will proceed with care and respect for all that Lyri stands for. As they left the council chamber, the weight of their task ahead was daunting yet exhilarating. They had secured a chance not only for Lyra but for her entire planet to embark on a journey of emotional discovery. That night, as they looked up at the stars, the same stars they had studied from Earth, they realized that their mission had grown beyond scientific inquiry to something much greater. They were now architects of a new era for Lyri, bridging two worlds with the power of emotion. After the Council's decision, Lyra, Michael, and Tom returned to Earth to prepare for the pilot program. Their mission had evolved from a simple cultural exchange to a groundbreaking sociological experiment that might reshape an entire civilization. The observatory once again became their base of operations, now bustling with activity as they planned the implementation of the pilot program. Michael coordinated with various experts in psychology and social sciences to develop materials and training sessions for the Lyri volunteers who would be participating. "Are we ready for the first group to arrive?" Tom asked as he checked the schedule. The Lyrian participants were due in a few days, and everything needed to be perfect. "We're almost set," Michael replied, scrolling through a digital checklist. "The translators are calibrated, the accommodation is prepared, and the seminar materials are in the final stages of review." Lyra was busy finalizing the curriculum, which included interactive workshops, empathy training sessions, and controlled exposure to human culture. "I want to ensure that the experience is as enriching and gentle as possible. We need to ease them into it," she explained. Tom nodded in agreement. "It's like teaching someone to swim. We'll start in the shallow end and go deeper as they get comfortable." As the day arrived for the Lyri volunteers to land, the trio gathered at the landing site with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The spacecraft touched down smoothly, and as the doors opened, a group of 5 Lyrians stepped out, looking around with wide, curious eyes. "Welcome to Earth," Lyra greeted them warmly, stepping forward to guide them off the platform. Michael introduced himself and Tom, and they all headed to the observatory where the volunteers would spend the next few weeks. "We've prepared a series of sessions that we hope will be both informative and transformative," Michael told the group as they walked. The first few days were spent in orientation, helping the Lyri acclimate to Earth's environment and introducing them to basic human interactions. "Remember, any touch, smile, or gesture you observe can be significant," Lyra instructed the group during a workshop. As the program progressed, the volunteers began to experience and even mimic some of the emotional expressions they saw. One of the Lyri, a young scientist named Corin, became particularly adept at identifying and even expressing what he called the nuances of human feeling. "Watching you interact, it's clear how much richness there is in emotional expression," Corin shared during a feedback session. "I never realized how much we were missing until now." The breakthroughs continued, with each volunteer gradually opening up to new emotional experiences. The workshops facilitated by Michael focused on the science of emotions, while Tom's sessions were more about practical application and real-life interaction. "Seeing you all grow like this, it's more than we could have hoped for," Tom said during one of the group discussions, visibly moved by their progress. After weeks of intensive sessions, it was time for the volunteers to return to Lyri. They held a final meeting at the observatory to discuss their experiences and the next steps. "We'll be returning with a new perspective, one that I believe can truly benefit our people," Corin said, his voice steady and more expressive than when he had arrived. Lyra smiled, proud of what they had achieved. "Your insights and experiences will be invaluable as we look to expand the program. You are pioneers in the truest sense." As they bid farewell to the volunteers, Michael, Tom, and Lyra knew that the seeds they had planted would continue to grow. They stood together, watching the spacecraft lift off, its trail a bright arc against the night sky. "This is just the beginning," Lyra said, her voice full of hope. "A new chapter for Lyri and for us." Michael put an arm around her shoulders, and Tom on the other side nodded. "Across the universe, we've made a connection that will last forever." As the stars twinkled above, mirroring the light in their eyes, they turned back to the observatory to plan their next steps. There was much work to be done, but for now, they celebrated the success of bridging two worlds with the universal language of emotion.